Good evening. I'm covering a podcast interview with Dean Julia Garcia at Coastal Bend College. So she is the Dean of Workforce Training and Director of the Pleasanton site. So she's the director of one of the 4 sites that Coastal Bend College has here in South Texas. She was interviewed April 4th of 2018. So I selected her because prior I worked at a larger institution and I wanted to know what the revenue and expenditures look like for a community college, as well as she has a well-versed background in higher education, and she's a very instrumental person of our particular site. So recent decisions that she said she had to make and the impacts of each so pretty much she works with financing of workforce areas, so she hosts each program's budget and she works with the faculty to coordinate from the faculty to the coordinator to the assistant dean to the dean of the institution. So she manages expenses such as supplies, faculty, substitutes, adjunct professors, and any other necessary delivery of instruction, so trainings and such. The impacts that primarily were supplies purchases versus the amount of students, and so whether or not having enough supplies for the students or having too much supplies for the students, with a class based on 30 students in each one. The toughest budget decision that she said was an issue was when equipment was needed to develop the welding program in Beeville. They had to find more funds because their funds were not sufficient enough, so applying for Perkins grants, finding the institutional budgets from another program, and then figuring out how to purchase an item that was not covered at all in the budget. So she worked with looking at all the departmental budgets to find sources that were not used in those department budgets, and she reallocated those funds as needed. So another question I asked was about decrease of the expenses and increase of revenue. So she said to decrease the expenses, she always shops for bargains or works with the vendors to negotiate a price for the institution, as well as minimizing the substitute faculty that are required for our professors. So increasing the revenue, so we do a lot of recruitment to increase the number of students, which increases the number of contact hours or contact number of students within a coursework so that the state reimburses the institution. Political pressure, she states that a lot of the problems are with the review of misuse of funds, and so what she has to do is make sure that the particular expenditures are tight in particular programs as the need of the building for students, to make sure that no misuse of funds are found, because they're always looking for misuse to see how the college is being ran. Advice for the professional, she stated to look a couple of years prior to when those budgets and expenditures were spent, and so she recommended about 3 to 5 years of a range, and then making sure that they know the plans of the base program and what their needs are, and using prior years to develop that budget. The source of revenue and distribution that she spoke about, the revenue is based on the enrollment of the students and the number of credit hours that they take, and so she gave an example of an English class and how many credit hours are based on the contact hours, and then she shared that the students pay the tuition based on the credit hour, but the state reimburses about 49% of the contact hours worth, and then she provided a little bit of math that I included. She also covered the difference in tuition for a regular college student versus a dual credit student to see that the differences of the cost of that particular revenue is less. The trend line that she shared is the student enrollment and the contact hours of the student as they've been adjusting from 2014. It was a lot lower, and then 16-17 it increased, and then again in 17-18 the enrollment decreased. So she said the budgets haven't changed much in 2 years, but the enrollment of the students has. We spoke about the type of accounting, which you'll see which 2 we covered, but she said the business office is the primary host of that, and so she's unsure what the actual accounting function is, but she believes that the accounting rolls on a functional accounting process. And a question that I asked her was about unanticipated expenses, how those options are. The institution at Coastal Bend commits to 1.3 to 1.5 million, and then they have a reserve of 5 years. And so in the last 3 years, the institution has been able to commit to give some of the contingency funds for major expenses. So if something comes up, there's contingency funds that are available for them to utilize that were particularly in that reserve. She states that the biggest challenge as the dean and director of Coastal Bend is staying on top of all the expenditures and revenues that are listed for and the ones that come up. So she has to coordinate with the faculty and staff. Sometimes that takes her scheduling one-on-one time with them to ensure that the specific items or equipment needed, that there's enough room in the budget to allocate or to utilize, and then if not, she does additional research to see how to provide that information. So the 3 main lessons I learned in this podcast interview with Julia Garcia would be how the revenue and expenditures are accommodated for each program, generally at an as-needed basis, because some things do come up that she has to go and search and find other sources for to take care of the student population. I also learned that the state reimburses about 49% of that contact hour of student enrollment, which I did not know. I knew that they were reimbursed, just didn't know the particular percentage, so I enjoyed actually being able to know that number. And then I was actually a little shocked by the fact that a community colleges runs on a $1.3 to $1.5 million range, and that their reserve is a 5-year reserve versus what a larger university sometimes uses as well. And then the list of the questions that I asked, the first 5 are what were provided, and then the last 5 are what I did. Thank you for your time.